Gormagat, and thank you for allowing me to be here this morning, and I want to thank my own colleague for allowing me to take his place. I'm particularly interested in this because of what's happening in Achill Island and the proposals that's there and the feasibility study that they have done into hydrogen. So I suppose my first question, and I completely agree with Deputy O'Keefe in terms of the joined up approach, and maybe just the one first question on that is whose job is it to bring all that together, to bring all the services together, the water, the fibre and the electricity for import, export. So just where does that responsibility lie?
Deputy Conway-Walsh, if you want to group your questions and we then put them back to the members.
Okay, right. It's a bit different to the Finance Committee. Okay, so that will be my first question. The next one is when are we going to have the National Integrated Hydrogen Strategy? And maybe from yourself, Dara, in terms of how important is that to what you're trying to achieve? I'm very supportive of the ownership for the people on the islands and indeed all communities. I come from a community that we have gone through the whole Corrib gas project, and we must learn from what has happened there. We see huge rising energy costs, while the project on our back door has made 750 million in the last year and doesn't pay any corporation tax. And the only thing we can get at this stage is the learning from it, and we need to apply it to all of these projects. I know my own colleague Darren O'Rourke has tabled legislation around the hydrogen strategy as well, and we absolutely acknowledge the need for that. So when is that going to be ready? How late are we to the table in terms of the development of hydrogen as well, and what impact does that have, and what measures are we taking to catch up, if you like? I think there's huge opportunities along the west coast, the Atlantic Economic Corridor, that haven't been presented to us heretofore in terms of how we avail of all of the benefits from the development of renewable energy. And I just want to ask about the tie-in of with the Atlantic University, and how is that going to be developed? And I very much hear what you're saying, Dara, in terms of the workers not being available in the island, the extra cost of bringing workers into the island and all that. But if we can build the human capacity within the islands, that is the sustainable way forward. So again, what opportunities are there? One thing I want to ask you around the cooperative models is, obviously you need partnerships as you develop and investment and all of that, but how do you ensure that all the licenses and all of those things aren't granted through the cooperative model and then they're given away, if you like, or taken over by developers who are going to profit from that at the end of the day? Or, how are we going to make sure that the benefits, the ownership, not just a community fund, is with communities and with the islands? And what can we do as Oireachtas members to help you in what you're doing? I really want to commend the efforts that are being made in all of the islands, and obviously particularly my own Achill Island.
Thank you. We might start with the department first of all. So, Mr. Finnegan, I think most of the questions are directed towards yourself.
Thank you. Deputy McCarthy, you give a very clear explanation of a problem that the islands are going to face, and I think it's going to be faced all over the country. As we try to reduce carbon, we increase our reliance on electricity. Transport will become electrified, heating will become electrified, and exactly the issue you described is going to be faced in an awful lot of communities. And I suppose that's why that big headline 4 billion figure for investment in the network was arrived at and allowed by Crew. And we are going to have to work with ESB Networks and EirGrid, and they are doing the planning and the upgrades to make sure that the network is going to be fit for purpose in this new low carbon high electricity world that we are planning for. But your point is very well made, and we will have to ensure that everywhere, and I suppose the islands are going to feel it first, being the most remote, but it's a nationwide issue, and it's the big challenge facing the grid developers and operators, is to ensure that we're ready for this new low carbon world. Deputy Conway-Walsh, you're right, these are general issues for the islands. Hydrogen is of huge interest to the department. We're looking at it this year. We are going to be taking the first steps on a strategy. I think when we look out to the future, it's in the Climate Action Plan that hydrogen is surely going to play a huge role in the future. It's a developing technology. I think certainly our EU partners are also starting to look at this and look at the potential of it. I noted the Clean Islands, the Clean Energy for EU Islands published a very interesting study of energy in Arran, and it's very striking when you read it that half of the carbon footprint of the community on the island is actually the ferry. So if there's a solution to decarbonise the ferry, that's what about the fishing boat as well. Yeah. That's a huge step forward, and at the technology is at a very early stage. It's very encouraging that the EU is doing this research, that the islands are taking part, and it's a task for the department this year is to start the process of a hydrogen strategy, because hydrogen is obviously going to be a huge part of this new world. Where does it?
Sorry, I'm just very keen to try and get it.
I think we would be. It's a vast topic where I think we'll be working towards a consultation in the first stage, just to gather stakeholders' opinions. I mean, you yourself, you mentioned a huge number of organisations and stakeholders, and we would have to gather everything that's known from all of those. So we're working on it this year, and our first step would be a consultation and just publicly finding out what's out there, where the technology is going and what the potential is.
But when would we actually have it to be discussed at the committee, or the transport committee?
Yep.
Thank you. So I don't think we can give you a date here today, but I would just say that we will, as members will be aware, the Climate Action Plan 2021 was published last November, set out our kind of work plan on all these issues across the next number of years. There will be an update to the Climate Action Plan coming in 2022. So, I think we will be in a position to give you a clearer time frame on it, Deputy. But the important thing is just on hydrogen, and I think to underline, our focus is obviously green hydrogen, renewable hydrogen. So while maybe there are hydrogen of other colours and hues across Europe that perhaps a bit more advanced, we really want to harness particularly our wind energy. So that's onshore and offshore wind energy, and for example, wind energy that might otherwise be curtailed or EirGrid has to turn down. There's a huge potential for that energy to actually then go into hydrogen production. So the real focus has to be on clean and renewable hydrogen. There's a number of consultations, for example, that we have published on the offshore renewables. There was a consultation recently that's closed on phase 2 projects that would be relevant, I think, for the island communities on the west coast. That was looking at things like combining offshore wind farms with electrolyzers and producing hydrogen. And I know we're involved in a number of initiatives like the North Seas Grid Initiative that again is looking at those sort of things like hybrid wind farms, interconnectors, hydrogen production. So there's a lot happening on this in Europe.
And that's the real need for an integrated strategy. That's what I'm concerned about. I think, we need that in order to be able to give us confidence and guidance, and to have that exchange of learning across all of these initiatives, and the money that's been spent in innovation and technology as well.
Absolutely, and I know it's something our minister is very, very keen on as well, and so we can further clarity will be coming on when that's happening.
So it's a priority.
It's a priority.
My mic on, there we are. So, yeah, I think a lot of European countries already have a hydrogen strategy up and running. So we're a bit behind the playbook there. And the sooner, obviously, we get it, the better, because groups like ourselves are working on it, and we're working in a vacuum when we don't have a strategy that the government has presented to us. And Rose, just to get back to your point about the Corrib gas field and all the difficulty that was there with the local community, you know, I don't know if any proper study has been done on how you would do that differently, but that's what we're interested in, is that whenever there's an energy project around our islands, we don't want to be the voice of the opposition. We want to be the voice of the people who feel this is our project as well as your project. So it's not that we want to own the project, it's that we want to feel sufficiently engaged with the project that we can claim it as partly ours. In other words, that we're going to get as many of the benefits as possible from this project as are possible for a local community to get. So obviously there's going to be, you know, if you have boats going in and out to offshore wind farms, you're going to need places for the boats to tie up, you're going to need crews for the boats, you're going to need particular skills. All of that could be facilitated for island and coastal communities. Rossaveel is obviously going to play a big role. We want to make sure that develops and is not overlooked. Because Rossaveel, I don't know if you appreciate, for the three islands like the Aran Islands, Rossaveel is like part of our island. On Achill, you have a bridge, and both sides of the bridge are Achill, aren't they? Really, it's not just the island side of it. The other side of the bridge is just as much. You have a hotel just there. Well, it's the same with us. Rossaveel is really part of the Aran Islands. The fishermen who work from Rossaveel are islanders. The boat owners are islanders. The ferry crews are, a lot of them, islanders. We park our cars in Rossaveel. Rossaveel is part of the Aran Islands. And if Rossaveel develops, the Aran Islands will also develop and will benefit from it. And with Dúdarás now planning to have a renewable energy park there, that's exactly what we want, as well as a deep water port for bigger boats to come in now. So that would all be tremendous growth. But let's hope it happens and it's not just put on the long finger. So I would like to see, I mean, we're just working out at the top of our heads how best to have a local community engage with a large offshore developer. We're working off the seat of our pants to see how that will work. It'd be great to have a study done on that, and that would clarify how not to do it. Like, what was wrong with the Corrib development, that it didn't engage the community in the proper way, and how could we do it properly from here on in with all these major developers? That's what I'd love to see a study done on that, with proper clear guidelines for the government as well as for local communities on how to best engage with these big developers. We're engaging at the moment with the Skerda developers. We're already in touch with some of those people involved in that, and discussing with them how we could be more, how we could facilitate the project. It's not just how we could benefit, it's how we can facilitate the project. I think if these developers feel they have the support of the coastal community and the local community, then it's much easier for them to work. So it's to everybody's benefit.